from the ovary is known as ovulation. Now, after ovulation, next what? After ovulation, the ovum is. Now that we talk about the ovum, ये जो ovum है, this ovum will have two fates. मतलब fate. What is the meaning of fate? मतलब क्या होगा इसका? So now when I talk about this particular ovum may undergo the process of fertilization, may not undergo the process of fertilization. So based on this, we are going to understand two processes. When it undergoes fertilization, then what? And when it does not undergo fertilization, then what? So first is, we are going to understand that if this particular ovum undergoes the process of fertilization. So let us try understanding that ये जो ovum है, what will happen to this ovum if it undergoes the process of fertilization? If it undergoes the process of fertilization, then what will happen? It will result in the formation of the fetus. What is fetus? Multicellular developing embryo which takes the shape of a miniature adult and results in the formation of an infant in the embryo sac. So, agar fertilization hua, then fetus. And next is if no fertilization, and this is majorly happening in the female body when we are coming across, because the process of fertilization will happen only few number of times. So when we are talking about what will happen if the process of fertilization does not happen, if the process of fertilization does not happen, then we come across a process known as menstruation. So we are going to come across this now. What? How does these different processes happen? So let us start with this. Ovulation has happened and the ovum is now in the fallopian tube. Is this ovum absolutely functional? No, it is still immature and it will undergo the process of development and result in the formation of a functional female gamete. What is the functional female gamete known as? The functional female gamete is known as ovum. Within the lifespan of one day, if the process of fertilization happened, and this particular process of fertilization as it happens, what will it result in? It will result in the formation of a single cell, and that is what is known as the zygote. What is this process I'm talking about? This particular process is known as fertilization. What is this process known as? This is known as fertilization. How will we define? What is the definition of fertilization? Fusion of one male gamete. The same thing that I had told you for double fertilization, also the concept remains exactly the same. Fusion of one female gamete with one male gamete to form a single cell zygote. There also, with reference to the flower, what did we come across? What should happen to the zygote now? The zygote immediately undergoes the process of cell division. Then this zygote now gets transformed into a multicellular structure. What do we call this multicellular structure as? This multicellular structure is known as the embryo. What is the difference between the word zygote and the embryo? Zygote is a single cell formed by the process of fertilization. Zygote is a single cell formed by the process of fertilization. And this zygote, when we are talking about the process of fertilization also, if I understand, how did the process of fertilization happen? The ovum with a large amount of cytoplasm, the small sperm contributing only the nuclear region. So after the process of fertilization, what is the process of fertilization like? It is something like this, where both the nuclear content will come together. What is the contribution of the male gamete? Only that to 23 chromosome, only that much. Not that baby, kind of. क्या चल रहा है? कुछ नहीं. उसपे तुम अपना लाइफ क्यों वेस्ट कर रहे हो? Get that side, Kaushik. Both of them. Look at them. क्या कर रहे थे वो पूछने के लिए भी मुझे बिलो डिग्निटी लग रहा है. Now, when we are talking about the process of fertilization, what is fertilization? Fusion of the nuclear content. So now what is happening? This will result in the formation of a zygote. In the entire process of zygote, what is getting, in the entire process of zygote, if I ask you, what is the contribution of the female gamete, the entire cell with the large amount of cytoplasm? And now that I talk about the zygote, what is the zygote containing? The entire cytoplasm of the female gamete, the nucleus of the female gamete, and only the nucleus of the male gamete. So this nucleus, which is the reserve food, the entire nucleus is the reserve food. What is the source of food for the process of fertilization to form the embryo? The source of food is the cytoplasm of the ovum. So that's the reason we were talking about this process also, that why in the female only one gamete, why not 4 functional gamete? अगर 4 functional gamete होता तो चारों के चारों सेल छोटे-छोटे होते, and the process of fertilization, after fertilization cell division के लिए nutrition insufficient होगा. So now that we are talking about this, gamete has got transformed into the zygote and now helping in the process of cell division. But the reserve food stored in it, will it allow the process of cell division? The entire process? No, entire process के लिए फिर भी nutrient insufficient है. So by the time the embryo is almost about 8 to 16 cells, cell division कैसे हो रहा है? This particular zygote, first of all, it will divide into a 2-cell structure. Then it will divide into a 4-cell structure, and then this will go on, resulting in the formation of a multicellular structure, something like this, and this goes on. So by the time the embryo is almost about 8 to 16 cells, to reserve food in the cells is almost all getting used up. At this time, this developing embryo, at this time, now that this is almost having about 8 to 16 cells, can it carry out the process of cell division on its own again? No, now it is almost running out of nutrition. अब ये अपने आप process of cell division carry on नहीं कर सकता है. So by this time, what will happen is this developing embryo will always make its attachment with the uterine wall. This developing embryo will always try making its attachment with the uterine wall. And what is this process known as? This process is known as implantation. Take this word. The definition of this word is very, very important. Implantation. What is implantation? Write down. What is implantation? The process of embedding or attachment. The process of attachment of the developing embryo. Process of attachment of the developing embryo into the uterine wall. Process of attachment of the developing embryo into the uterine wall. Process of attachment of developing embryo into the uterine wall is known as implantation. So by the time for that process of attachment of the developing embryo into the uterine wall, So what is the function of the uterus? Now let us come across. Again, what did we learn? What are the 2 functions of the ovary? Formation of gamete, release of hormones. What is the function of the fallopian tube? Now you can tell me, you look at this process that I have drawn and tell me the 2 functions of fallopian tube. Number 1 is passage of the ovum, and number 2 is the site of fertilization. So fallopian tube के 2 functions याद रखना है. What are the 2 functions of the fallopian tube? एक तो it helps in the passage of the female gamete. Number 2, it is a site of fertilization in the human female body.
Fertilization होने के लिए sperm आएगा.
The sperm will enter into the female body and the sperm will follow both the process. The sperm will follow both the pathway. Now, the question should have been, how will the sperm know that the ovum is here? Now, the ovum is here. The sperm is actually not able to understand immediately because these sperms are producing certain. Initially, when the sperm enters the body, the sperm will move this side also. The sperm will move this side also. And as it is, I already mentioned that a large number of the sperm gets killed in this entire process because of the acidity of the female fat. On top of that, Now, how the recognition? The recognition is there are variety of chemical substances which are released by the sperm also and the ovum also. जिसको fertilizing, anti-fertilizing कहा जाता है. These are set of chemical substances. मतलब now these chemical substances are released, fertilizing by the sperms, anti-fertilizing by the ovum. So because of these chemical substances, the chemical substances are actually acting as recognizing agents. So now a large number of sperms would move this side. But by the time one sperm had made its contact with the ovum, the rest of the sperms will not be able to make it contact because a whole large number of protective membrane starts developing. मतलब इस तरह का जब attachment हो चुका है, can the next sperm come in and make it contact? No, it cannot make its contact because there will be a large number of some protective coating, जिसको protective membranes, embryonic membranes कहा जाता है. A large number of protective membranes will be formed. Majorly in the human or mammals में there are 4 protective membranes बन जाता है immediately. As a result, the second and the third and the fourth sperm will not be able to make its contact, even though in the fallopian tube still at that time there will be many more hundreds of sperms left. What will happen to them? They will complete their lifespan.
How does IVF reproduction?
That's an artificial process. Now, this is what is a natural process I'm talking about. Where the ovum is released, and if the sperm enter the body at this lifespan, then only the process of fertilization. If it is IVF, what is happening? In case of IVF, exactly when the period of ovulation in the female body, at that time, they would make it specific that functional sperms enter the body. The formation of the release of the ovum is manipulated in the female body at that time. The release of the ovum is absolutely under medical care, or manipulated, I would say, and the entry of the sperm is also manipulated. And that's not a natural process. That is not a natural process. So when we are talking about the process of fertilizing,
Ma'am, what if the second sperm touches the ovary?
even if the second sperm touches also the ovum, the second sperm will not be able to deliver its nucleus. Because by the time the first sperm has already made its contact, just now what I mentioned is a large number of protective membranes develop हो जाता है. There are 3 sets of protective membranes, एक के बाद एक के बाद एक बने. So by the time the first has already put its nucleus inside, तो अगर second आया भी, it will be just outside there, complete its lifespan and then degenerate.
Ma'am, what is like layers बनने से पहले ही वो touch कर लिया तो?
No, the process is very specific. जैसे मैंने अभी बोला है, this is an elaborate process. Fertilizing, anti-fertilizing का जो reaction है, that is very very specific. That is very very specific. एक sperm का contact होने के साथ साथ the tip of the sperm produces an enzyme. वो enzyme release होते ही egg membrane फटाफट dissolve and the nucleus goes in. The moment the nucleus goes in, protective membrane develop होने लग जाता है. And जैसे ही protect, but it is true, this particular ovum will have a large number of sperms attached. तो ये बाकी का क्या होना है? They will just complete their lifespan and they get degenerate.
मैम फिर जो like sometimes twins beings are
Twins by 2 different methods. एक तो ये है, we will complete the process. I will tell you that process also. But twins, when we are talking about what are the 2 major types of twins? एक है identical and दूसरा है fraternal. तो अभी ये जो हम process सीख रहे थे, इसमें we were learning that after the process of fertilization, zygote बनता है, and after zygote is formed, the zygote results in the formation of this 2-cell stage. अब अगर मैं identical twins की बात करूं, तो ये जो 2-cell stage है, 2-cell stage में the cell should immediately enter into a 4-cell stage, जहाँ पे कोई भी cell detach नहीं होना चाहिए. They should always be in the form of a cluster of cells all attached to each other. वो ball of cells की तरह होता है, something like what I've drawn here. एक ball of cells है, all attached to each other, but division अंदर ही अंदर होता जा रहा है, and the structure is becoming bigger. तो identical twins में क्या होता है? Sometimes ये जो 2-cell stage है, they just separate. ये जो 2 cell stage है, they will just separate like this. Now that they separate like this, individually 2 separate embryo बनने लग जाता है, and this 2 will result in the formation of absolutely 2 different individual with the same sex and the same genetic makeup. क्योंकि fertilization एक ही sperm से हुआ. So this is what we are talking about as identical twins. ये हो गया identical twins क्योंकि ये fertilization के बाद 2 cell stage में जब split हो जाता है, 2 separate zygotes are formed, 2 embryo will be formed. तो उस condition में क्या होना था? 2 separate embryo will be formed, जो parallelly grow करेगा in the same uterus. But their genetic makeup is the same because वही एक sperm वही एक ovum से fertilize हुआ था.
Will the zygote and the sperm separate if one will get attached to one wall and the other?
हाँ, वो not necessarily एक ही जगह पे attach होगा, वो यहाँ पे भी attach हो सकता है, यहाँ पे भी attach हो सकता है. तो ये हो गया identical twins. So fraternal twins क्या होगा? Fraternal twins is something like this. If I talk about this, ये एक fertilization हो गया, and दूसरा polar body के साथ अगर fertilization हो जाता है, where I would come across at that time there will be 2 sets of fertilization but absolutely अलग-अलग. एक ओवम और स्पर्म का फर्टिलाइजेशन जिससे एक जाइगोट बनेगा, एक एम्ब्रियो बनेगा, और एक कोई पोलर बॉडी के साथ स्पर्म का फर्टिलाइजेशन उससे एक और सेपरेट जाइगोट बनेगा और एक और सेपरेट एम्ब्रियो बनेगा. नाउ दैट द 2 एम्ब्रियो, इफ आई टॉक अबाउट इस सिचुएशन में जो 2 एम्ब्रियो बनेगा, both the 2 embryos will be having separate sexes, separate genetic makeup.
जरूरी है ये separate नहीं हो सकता.
Use your senses. जरूरी तो है ही ना, because it is absolutely 2 sets of fertilization. ये ऐसे जो fertilization होगा, इसमें there is
And what if both of them are Y or XS?
नहीं, हाँ, genetic makeup absolutely separate होगा. Sexes sometimes can be same. Sexes same हो सकता. Genetic makeup will definitely.
Gender same हो सकता.
Non-identical sometimes sexes may be same. Sometimes sexes may be same, but they will be genetically non-identical definitely. So ये हो गया, इसको बोलेंगे fraternal. Sometimes one boy, one girl, 2 boys, 2 girls, ऐसे हो सकता है.
So ma'am, the polar, you said that the polarized cells were not that developed.
Polar bodies.
Sorry, polar bodies were not that developed. So
polar bodies are not developed. Polar bodies are not developed in the case they don't have adequate cytoplasm to carry out all these stages. So by chance kabhi-kabhar, now the formation of the fraternal twins is not very common. Out of 20 go with one
much rare too.
But today if I talk about आज का scenario ऐसा है, this type of situation is quite commonly happening because medical assistance is so much advanced nowadays. तो आजकल ऐसे अगर when it is sensed also in the female body, easily ये manageable है. With medical help it is manageable. But if I talk about एक generation पहले, 2 generation पहले, definitely this was happening in the female body, and most of the time the females were going through premature death, I mean those infant death and all these things.
Okay.
Abortion बहुत common था. But nowadays it is not that. Nowadays when I talk about, as she was asking about IVF में तो this process is a common process. So when we are talking about this today with so much of medical help, women with so many different type of complications and etc. also can give birth.
Even surrogates.
हाँ, surrogate is a different thing. Process same है, उसमें process same है, वो absolutely different story है. वहाँ पे process same है, maybe only because the male has a problem, female has a problem, उसके वजह से some another member, not from the 2 parents, somebody else is donating the gamete. Either male gamete को donate कर रहा है या तो female gamete को donate कर रहा है. That is different. But now we are understanding the process. So what would the process be later? Till here, what was it? It was implantation. I had already talked about the chances of the 2 different types of twins also. तो वो सब समझ के now try understanding that अगर ये अब implantation है, what is the necessity of implantation? The developing embryo is running out of nutrition. It cannot carry out the process of the cell division anymore. तो ये जो implantation है, in how many days it should happen after fertilization? 7 days of fertilization में लगभग हो जाना चाहिए. And now within 7 days of fertilization, the developing embryo has come in contact with the uterine wall to receive nourishment from the uterine wall. So after some time, by the time it has already attached with the uterine wall, what will also happen? Some as I was telling you already, some protective membranes start developing. अब ये सारे protective membranes start forming a major disc-like structure with the uterine wall. So now, ये जो entire developing embryo है, this will now progressively start becoming bigger. And as it starts becoming bigger, it will start developing some finger-like projections, making the attachment with the uterine wall quite prominent and quite distinct and quite firm. Because now it is not only a ball of cells inside, a whole lot of tissues are getting formed here, and then apart from the tissues, a developing embryo is also getting formed where the fetus is now in the process of development. Then what is a fetus? Where it is not only a group of cells but body parts have started developing. तो ये जो embryo था, this embryo initially it was just growing and developing, only cell division होके number of cells increase हो रहा था. But after a particular period of time, if I take some cells here, क्या होगा? Initially it was just cell division, but after a particular period of time, it is not only cell division, but certain cells have started undergoing maturation and tissues and organs have started forming. तो उसको हम बोलेंगे division and maturation is now going on parallel. So now body parts have started forming, and all these body parts, when it has started forming, what are we going to term this as? We are going to term this as the fetus. The head starts forming, the eye starts forming, the lip starts forming, the heart starts forming. तो ये जो multicellular structure से एक huge lot of changes start developing. And ये जो changes होने के लिए what is required? A whole lot of nutrients from the maternal blood is required. तो ये जो process था where the multicellular structure was just getting embedded in the uterine wall, and we had understood this is what is known as implantation. But implantation के साथ-साथ the embryo starts showing development of tissues and organs and systems. धीरे-धीरे एक cavity जैसे structure बन जाता है. And some fluid starts getting filled in, and यहाँ पे some protective membranes, one after the other, certain layers and layers of protective membranes are getting formed. From those protective membranes, a finger-like structure develop हो जाता है, where a large number of these blood vessels and all this network starts getting formed. तो ये जो पूरा structure है, इसको क्या बोलेंगे? This particular structure is known as placenta. What is placenta? From the fetus side, from the embryonic side, some finger-like projections develop, and from the maternal side, a huge lot of blood vessels, सब जैसे एक network जैसे बन जाता है, ताकि ये जो developing fetus है, is firmly attached to the uterine wall. The female is very well working, and she is doing her regular course, but does the fetus get detached? No, it does not get detached. Detached होने का chances कब है? At this time, within 7-10 days or majorly by 3 months. अगर implantation सही नहीं होता है, then detachment, and that is what is known as abortion. So अब जब ये attach हो गया है, and the process of arrangement of the tissues and the maternal blood vessels is very elaborate. It is almost fixed in the uterine wall. It will never get detached. But what is the significance of the fetus? Placenta. Why the placenta has to be formed? प्लासेंटा के 3 मेजर फंक्शंस याद रखना है अभी. What is the function of the placenta?
Nutrition provides.
It helps in the supply of nourishment. So I will say firstly, what is the job of the placenta? Placenta provides nourishment. Now when I say nourishment, meaning this entire placenta that we are talking about is nothing but a large number of blood vessels, membranes, जिसमें process of diffusion possible है. So nutrients are getting diffused from the maternal blood towards the fetus. अब ये जो fetus है, it needs oxygen. It has to give away carbon dioxide. So can I say that this placenta also brings about the oxygen and the carbon dioxide exchange? Yes, it also can bring about the gaseous exchange. The placenta can also bring about the gaseous exchange. The developing fetus will pick up the oxygen from the maternal blood and give away the carbon dioxide towards the maternal blood. By what process? Simple diffusion. Process यहाँ पे simple diffusion है. What is the third that you'll have to remember? ये जो developing fetus है, it is not developing wastes in the body. धीरे धीरे the tissues are developing. And what is the most common waste? Most toxic waste, nitrogenous waste in the form of urea. So ऐसे अब जो ये fetus develop हो रहा है, the cells are constantly giving out waste substances. Initially सिर्फ carbon dioxide, but now that the liver is getting formed, now that the premature kidneys are getting formed, muscles and tissues and bones धीरे धीरे form हो रहा है. It is also giving rise to some nitrogenous waste substances, urea. So how will it diffuse that urea? It is not in contact with the external environment. So how will it give away the urea? Again diffuse into the maternal blood. So it will also help in the release of the diffusion of the nitrogenous waste substances into the maternal blood. ये सारे points specific लिखना है. Helps in the nourishment, diffusion of glucose and antibodies and vitamins and etc. And helps in the exchange of gases. Acts as a embryonic excretory organ. And on top of that, the fourth point that also you'll have to remember is what? What is the other job of the placenta? It also temporarily acts as a endocrine gland. What are the two hormones released in the female body to maintain the process of pregnancy? Majorly progesterone and estrogen. So here, this placenta is also producing the same hormones, estrogen and progesterone, but only for that short period of time. Why? Addition to the cells of the ovary already progesterone and estrogen release कर ही रहा है, but now the placenta also additionally releases an adequate amount of progesterone because this helps in the maintenance of pregnancy. Now this entire period will go on, all these processes will go on, and after a particular period of time, almost about 9 months, almost about 40 weeks, what will happen? This entire fetus is developed. Now that the fetus is developed, it will slowly start moving, descending towards the cervix, and it is in the process of getting released by the way of the vagina. But for this, one particular hormone has to be released almost by the 8.5 month or the 9 month, depends body to body. So at that time, one particular hormone has to be released from the pituitary. What is that hormone? Nine.
Estrogen.
Nine.
Progesterone.
Hormone from the pituitary and growth hormone. Which hormone helps in the uterine contraction during childbirth? Oxytocin from the posterior pituitary. So once all these processes are all done by the process of placentation, all these functions are all carried over, and the fetus is already formed with all the body parts done, then a hormone known as oxytocin has to be released by the posterior pituitary, and this will result in what? Uterine contraction and result in the process of childbirth. This is what is happening if fertilization happens in the female body. So this was one fate that we were studying. Now, let me come across that what would also happen if the fertilization does not take place. So now, if I understand that by the time the ovum is in the fallopian tube, ये इस प्रोसेस के लिए भी एप्लीकेबल है, but I did not talk about this at that time. By the time the ovum is in the fallopian tube, the uterine wall starts becoming thicker. Always, always. By the time the ovum is in the fallopian tube, मतलब जैसे ही ovulation हुआ, the entire uterine wall will start becoming thicker. The uterine wall, muscular जो layers है, epithelial cells are always a fast dividing group of cells. तो ये जो lining है, this is nothing but made up of epithelial cells. So epithelial cells, almost another 5-10 layers develop हो जाता है, followed by extensive supply of blood vessels. Why? Because the moment ovulation has happened, the body prepares for all these processes. क्योंकि fertilization अगर हुआ तो implantation की जरूरत होगा. So that's the reason the body prepares. But now what's happening? ये जो ovum fully mature हो गया, and now after that the process of fertilization did not happen. So now that the process of fertilization did not happen, then what is next? This ovum which has already completed its lifespan. What is its lifespan? 1 day, 24 hours, maximum 24 to 48 hours. अभी process of fertilization नहीं हुआ है, and now next one, this ovum will start degenerating. Break down. So now that it is getting broken down and it will get released along with the waste substances of the body. So during this process, what next also is the degeneration of the uterine wall. क्योंकि अभी ये thick uterine wall की कोई जरूरत है ही नहीं. अगर fertilization होता तो ही इसका जरूरत है. So now that the body has understood that the ovum is degenerating, no need of the uterine wall. Now what next? The uterine wall sheds, the ovum degenerates, and all these substances releases out of the body as waste substances. And what is this particular process known as? Menstruation. So what is released during the process of menstruation? The remnants of the ovum, the degenerated parts of the dead cell, the degraded parts of the blood vessels, uterine wall. So all these along with the blood and the mucus, all this is released out of the body and a process known as menstruation. So what did we learn? We have come across two processes when fertilization happens, when fertilization does not happen. Since we are talking about the process of reproduction and the exchange of the gametes, something more that we have to come across is definitely we are coming across fertilization would very well involve the process of exchange of the gametes, but its case are some additional microbial infections, something like the bacterial and the viral infections hota hai, and some are very very dreadful also. So what are some of the infections that we should really be aware about? What are those? We are talking about some common viral and bacterial infections. What are those? Those are known as STD. These are known as STDs. What are the two types of STDs? Bacterial हो सकता है, viral हो सकता है. Now, when I talk about the bacterial STDs, they are very I would say less dreadful. Dreadful नहीं होता ज़्यादा. They are not dangerous as such. And but viral ones are more dreadful to always understand. Viral ones are more dreadful. What are some examples when I talk about the bacterial ones? Which are those? Syphilis. And which are these? Gonorrhea. When we are talking about syphilis or gonorrhea. And here when I talk about the viral ones. The viral ones are the genital warts and AIDS. Now, talking in general about the syphilis and the gonorrhea and the warts, these are comparatively less dreadful. Why do we say these are less dreadful? Because they would generally bring about some infection in the reproductive tract, urinary passages, sometimes blood in the urine, or sometimes high fever, etc., etc. But these type of complications that happen are easily treated. They can be easily treated.
At least now. At least now.
At least now, yes, because these are not, in 7 days time, in 10 days time, the person may easily get rid of it. The problem is with this, when we are talking about AIDS, what is the full form? AIDS full form क्या है? AIDS का full form, this you should know, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. This you have to remember. Acquired इसको syndrome क्यों कहते हैं? Because the causative agent, what is the causative agent? The causative agent is human immunodeficiency virus. Human immunodeficiency virus. All of you take a note of this. ये याद रखना है. कौन?
मैं बार-बार पहनना
ये
है,
ना?
मुझे पता नहीं क्या बुला रहा है क्या.
उपरांत को एक दिन मैं आज से मैं आधा घंटा रुका. Now, when we are talking about these different type of STDs, remember, if you are asked what are the symptoms, just एक दो symptom ही याद रखना है. It results in some minor bacterial infections, viral infections, some lesions are there, etc. Now, the dreadful ones are HIV. What is the major problem? This HIV may come in contact with the body, the male or the female body. What is the major problem? They start destroying the WBCs. White blood cells. They start destroying the WBCs, and as a result, the immunity of the person is extremely disturbed. Immunity बहुत low हो जाता है, and as a result, this person becomes prone to variety of infections. इसीलिए इसको syndrome बोला जाता है. It is not like a disease, a common disease where at the most a person may suffer from 3-4 symptoms. एक दो part of the body may be disturbed, but in the case of AIDS, since the number of WBC comes down to hundreds, a person who is suffering from HIV infection may also have WBC count in 300s and 400s in comparison to 9,000 and 10,000. So that's the reason this person becomes prone to every infection. Sorry, now that we are our body is able to combat with all those various infection germs that we every day come in contact. But this person is becoming prone, affect हो जा रहे बहुत जल्दी they become affected by every type of a microbe that they come across. So skin infection हो जा रहा है, lung infection हो जा रहा है, kidney infection हो जा रहा है, etc. etc. So variety of symptoms at the same time. That's why it is very difficult to treat. That's the reason the word syndrome. So now, if this type of a condition would happen, then what? How to prevent? We talk about now the last part of the chapter, that is contraception. Contraception मतलब variety of methods जिससे ये सारे भी prevent हो सके and the method of fertilization भी prevent हो सके. Now, method of fertilization prevent होने का जरूरत कब है? When maybe now, I just give you a general idea that whenever we are talking about when would a person think of contraception. Contraception क्या है? सबसे पहले मैंने ये बोला है कि contraception, the moment I think of contraception, what it should mean? A person who does not want the process of fertilization. Contraception basically इसके लिए नहीं होता है. Contraception is basically for preventing the process of fertilization. Now, can you think and tell me why would a male, why would a female not undergo the process of fertilization, would not want to undergo the process of fertilization? Agar if any one of them suffering from some genetic disorder, तो ये medically advised भी रहता है. So when we are talking about genetic disorder है, because genetic disorder the parents are having, definitely the next generation will suffer. तो genetic disorder है. Then contraception, age, contraception. Sometimes for financial conditions भी लोग contraception के लिए जाते हैं. Sometimes already the family is big enough, then also contraception. So
if they don't want kids, if their
That is what is contraception, meaning preventing. Again, I tell you, contraception STD को prevent करने के लिए नहीं है. If you get a question, are the contraceptive methods like such and such, can they prevent STDs? They can prevent, but STDs, contraception STD prevent करने के लिए actually नहीं है. But they do prevent. Now let us look into some methods. Which are some of the methods? We talk about contraceptive methods. Contraceptive methods, to talk about some of them. Contraceptive methods and a brief comparison, which is safe. I talk about the first method known as the mechanical barriers. When we are talking about the mechanical barriers, now mechanical barrier, just try to understand the advantage disadvantage part, because this is what you are asked in your exams. Mechanical barriers, कौन से mechanical barriers जिसके लिए the person would not need any medical help. The person can very well use on her or his own, and we would understand some methods, some examples like the cervical caps. We would understand some devices or membranes like the diaphragms and like the condoms. So ये सारे जो है, what is the benefit? If I will tell you the benefit, the advantage, disadvantage दोनों याद रखना है. So when I talk about the advantage क्या लिखना है? Mechanical method, advantage, they provide advantage both for fertilization, prevent fertilization and prevent STD दोनों. So advantage ये है, when I talk about the advantage, prevent STDs, yes. And can they prevent fertilization? Yes, they can prevent fertilization also. But now that they prevent fertilization only for a short period of time, ये permanent process कुछ भी नहीं है. इसके लिए, is there any, now that a person would use any of these membranes, etc., is it possible that the person may suffer from some minor infections? हाँ, possible है. Quite a number of times, a person who is using this cervical caps and etc., minor infections होता है. Some rashes, some pustules, etc. होता है. So now that I talk about, are these very dangerous? No, ये minor infections के category में ही आता है. Not too much of a major medical help की ज़रूरत नहीं है. So what is the disadvantage? You will write if you are asked. Right, one disadvantage of this method, it brings out or it carries along with it a number of minor bacterial infections. Minor bacterial infections होता है in this process. The next that I talk about would be the chemical method. The chemical method of contraception जो है, ये basically female के लिए होता है. When we are talking about the chemical method of variety है. So when I talk about chemical method of contraception, I would majorly talk about the oral pills है, IUCDs है, then loops है, then copper T है. Now all these, remember, these are majorly for the females, not for the males. So ये जो oral pills है and IUCDs है, loops है, copper T है, now quite a number of them. Now this is consumption and most of these are implantation. मतलब एक छोटा सा capsule जैसे होता है and एक छोटा सा string जैसे होता है, and this would generally be implanted here, say something like this, say copper T, something like this. इस तरह से एक uterine wall में implant किया जाता है, cervix के आसपास implant किया जाता है. तो अब अगर implant हुआ, then what is the benefit? This starts releasing the copper ions. ज़्यादा से, most of them releases a whole lot of copper ions and makes the entire reproductive tract not fit for the survival of the sperms. So this generally helps in killing sperms even more. So chances of fertilization इससे कम हो जाता है. These are all birth control. These are all birth control, preventing fertilization. But dangerous is this one. This is consumption easy hai. It is a just simple consumption, but it prevents fertilization by stopping the process of ovulation. So if a female is consuming this for almost a year or a couple of years, क्या होगा? In the female body, the levels of the hormones are becoming irregular. The levels of the hormones are becoming irregular. So as a result, if the levels of the hormones, what is there? Phone है. Oh, wow, you love the mother so much. In today's world, son loving the mother so much. So now, when we are talking about this, when we look into this particular methods, what am I saying? The oral pills that we understand, these oral pills will prevent fertilization by stopping the process of ovulation. So this completely disrupts पूरा hormonal imbalance set up कर देता है in the female body. So maybe the female does not want to undergo the process of fertilization for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and she had been consuming these oral pills. But ये 2 years का consumption की वजह से, 1 year का consumption की वजह से, now what has happened? The hormonal imbalance has set up in her body. As a result, after 3 years, if she now wants to conceive, she will not be able to conceive, and it has become many cases में such type of females have become infertile, sterile जिसको बोला जाता है, and एक बार hormonal imbalance हो जाता है body में to set up normal, it takes a long time.
Which one of these is the safest?
Safest, nothing, none of them are safest, but comparatively this is because it needs medical help with medical advice, oral pills and all. People just as it is randomly they keep on consuming, and that's the reason the worry. If a person is going, if the female is going for the copper tea and roots, ये एक particular period के लिए ही होता है. After some years, after 1 year, after 2 years, ये non-functional हो गया. So that is not much to be worried about. But now that I talk about the chemical method, I'll take another 5 minutes. Now that we talk about this chemical method, is this a safer method in comparison to mechanical? No, this is not a safer method. It gives advantage, but disadvantage बहुत सारा है. The last method we will talk and we will wind up, that is surgical method. Now what are these surgical methods? When we are talking about the surgical method, 2 surgical methods है. One is vasectomy. The next is tubectomy. So when we are talking about vasectomy is something like this, when the vas difference is cut like this. So अब अगर vas difference में incision and cut है, these gametes which are produced here, can this come out of the male body and participate in the process of fertilization? कभी भी नहीं. And if I talk about again a similar method when we are talking about vasectomy is in the males. And what about the tubectomy? Tubectomy is in the female body. The oviduct is cut. So when I talk about the oviduct is cut this way, so when the oviduct is cut this way, will the gametes be formed here? Yes. Gametes form होगा, but the gametes will not be able to come out and participate in the process of fertilization. It will degenerate after a particular period of time, exactly like this. It will enter into the bloodstream and away from the body along with the wastes of the body.
So copper tea के बारे में वापस बता सकते हैं.
Copper tea is only for the females, where we understand these are some small capsule-like structures होता है. Even for the loops and copper tea, ये सारे एक ही category के हैं. IUC, these all of the same type. इसमें क्या होता है? If the female is not willing to go for the process of fertilization, childbirth, she can very well go for some of these methods, but ये individually नहीं किया जा सकता. It needs medical help. अब जब ये हो गया, this will be functional in the body for at the most 2 years, 3 years. उतना ही उसका lifespan रहता है. So for 3 years now, this female does not want to go for any of these processes. So इसमें से different type of ions are generally released, which are known as anti-spermicidal, मतलब sperm को मारने वाला ions. So this would generally not allow the process of fertilization. कैसे? Sperm motility बढ़ा देता है. Sperm motility इतना बढ़ जाता है, so even if the sperms are entering the female reproductive tract, chances of fertilization बहुत कम हो. Understood? So ये जो है, this is very important. With diagrams, it comes in your paper. So see that you understand this.
But if they cut the fallopian tube, what happens to the part? It just stays there.
It stays there because this is ये एक छोटा सा incision होता है. Because the tubes are all as it is
After they
there.
get tied up.
हाँ, and then tied अगर ऐसे करेंगे भी, this part will never fall off because there are connective tissues बहुत सारे हैं. These are connected to the skin. बाकी parts, बाकी organs के साथ तो connected है. So they will not fall off. The parts are not falling off. It's only the tube. एक छोटा सा cut only to discontinue passage को discontinue कर. It's not understood. It's not understood. ये capsule जैसे होते हैं. एक छोटा सा ring जैसे होता है. Okay, so with that you wind up with the portion, go through, read. One thing that all of you have to do is go through all the questions in the previous board question in the volume. Volume में जो भी previous board questions है, go through करो. Question answers what we have discussed in the notebook, check. First pre-board से ही set a target for yourself. अभी वो happy go lucky हो गया, अभी you have enjoyed बहुत सारा हो गया. अभी now from the first pre-board set a target and go on. एक particular 70 up first pre-board से target रख के चलो कि इतना मुझे मिलना ही है. हर एक चैप्टर को 2 से 4 बार रिवाइज करो. डाउट सॉल्विंग सेशंस में आई वांट टू सी दिस फेसेस. डाउट सॉल्विंग सेशंस किसी के पास कोई डाउट नहीं है. दे आर सो हैप्पी with all their doubts. Doubts पढ़ोगे, there should be at least few doubts. Clarify करो. Whatever your doubts, confusion, pre-board paper में भी जो doubt, confusion रहता है वो clarify करो. So that in the next paper you don't carry on with the same mistake. एक pre-board से दूसरा pre-board में 5 से 8 मार्क बढ़ते रहना चाहिए. Stagnant नहीं रहो. Okay? चलो all the best and do it. ये तुम्हें next week देना.
सच्ची में मेरा
Next week class है नहीं.
कोई तो है ना.
ये करूँ और अरे गुंडा में तो कुछ चल रहा था चेस 3-2 दिखा रहा है.
समझा ना?
अरे लाइव स्ट्रीम बंद करो. Thank you for watching guys. So, please subscribe and share this video.